I'd like you to give a warm welcome to our guest speaker, Dan Papes.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here speaking with you, and hopefully you guys won't be bored at all. I'll do my best. I'll tell you just a few foundational things that I think will set the table for this discussion. One is that there are kind of lots of ways of looking at leadership, and there are many books written on it. There are common philosophies that are different from each other that people adopt, and I've got my own. And the best way I find to communicate my own philosophy on leadership is to tell stories about situations that I've been in, and I've been in a lot of them. Most of them good, some of them extremely challenging, but I've had a lot of opportunities to try my leadership skills out, to fail a few times, and to succeed. Fortunately, I think quite a bit more often than I failed, but we'll see. And I'll tell you some stories about both kinds of situations where I did well and didn't do well. So hopefully you can learn from the stories. And then you'll have sort of the Dan Papes view of leadership for what that's worth. Okay? Tell you a little bit about some of the things that I've done, my background. And as I do, I'm going to tell you some stories from those. Some principles that I've adopted, and they're really generic principles that you can use in all different kinds of situations. Then some examples, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, some real situations, leadership challenges that I faced, and what I did in the face of those, and what I learned from some of those. I'm going to tell you about an experience I had at a company called Unify, which we ended up selling to Atos. I understand this is that there's some French associated with this class. You may know Atos is headquartered just outside of Paris. And then my experience at Digital Realty. And then finally, I'm just going to describe a few actions that I take and you might want to consider taking when it comes to leadership. Okay, so my background. My first job was a salesperson to Kennedy Space Center and the Space Shuttle program. And a lot of you, I notice when I talk to my children, they don't know a lot about the shuttle program. But I was selling to Kennedy Space Center, IBM Systems to Kennedy Space Center during the height of the Space Shuttle program. And it was very cool. I was 22 years old, and I was out at Kennedy Space Center, walking into the vehicle assembly building where they turned the Space Shuttle straight up and attached all the boosters to it. And I got to sit in the cockpit of the Space Shuttle. But more importantly, we got to provide solutions to the NASA technical teams in order to make sure that the shuttle did the things that it was supposed to do. About 6 months into my tenure at Kennedy Space Center, on January 28th, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded on takeoff. And some of you may have followed. They had they recognized the anniversary a few weeks ago. It was January 28th. And on that mission, it happened to be the first mission where they had a civilian go, and that civilian was a teacher named Kristen McAuliffe. It was a terrible day. You can look at the videos on YouTube to see and just to get an understanding of the perspective of it. But when that happened, the space program realized, and the whole federal government realized, this needed a major overhaul. And so what they did was they took a whole bunch of manual processes and they decided they were going to automate it, and they put it out for bid for computing equipment, a computing solution for that. And we bid on that. And again, at a very young age, I got to be involved in all of this. And IBM was the company that actually just installed all the new technology throughout the space program in order to make sure that we didn't have another tragedy like we did in that situation. So it's really some kind of experience, and we all took a real personal, it's like a mission to us to make NASA better and the shuttle safe. I then was an IBM sales manager So it was sales, then a sales manager. It was cool because I had Disney. I will tell you this about Disney. Disney is the worst company I ever had to deal with in my 33-year career. It's anybody know anybody who worked at Disney, or hopefully nobody's parents, CEO of Disney or anything? It's a we win, you lose kind of a thing when you're selling to Disney. They're really tough. The thing I used to always get from them is, I have 2 ears and a tail. I should get it for half price. But they were quite an interesting customer to cover. Then there was a time where lots of companies were basically taking their IT environments and letting somebody else run it for them. They were selling all their equipment, letting somebody else run it for them, end to end. It was a big trend. It was a huge money maker for companies, and it was a big money maker for IBM. And I led a large sales team that did that. Then, something you guys won't recognize much, but in about the year 2000, companies wanted to get on the internet. They weren't on the internet. 1998, 1999, 2000, GM wasn't on the internet. There were only a few really innovative companies that had internet businesses. One of them was Barnes & Noble. Another one was Victoria's Secret. And those two in particular were really led that trend. And then as the internet caught on, sort of like you hear about cloud today, as the internet caught on, everybody had to be on the web. They're like, we need a web presence. Ford has a web presence. We're GM, we don't have a web presence. And so we started a business unit that I ran inside of IBM. Again, fortunately, at a really young age, it was a really cool time. And we started this business unit and brought companies onto the internet. And then it went from, we want a web presence. If we're down 10% of the time, it doesn't matter. Now, nobody ever wants to be down, right? So if we're down, we lose $100 million in revenue for every hour that we're down. But then they wanted a presence, and then it built up to we want to do e-commerce on the web. If we have time, I'll tell you a story about Victoria's Secret, because it was a really interesting client of ours at that time. I left IBM. It was .com boom, and I went to a small consulting company, and we were consulting at that time to help companies figure out how they should do e-commerce on the web. This stuff for you guys is it's 18 years old, but at that time it was a new thing, selling stuff on the web. So I went to that consulting company, and then we did some work for IBM. I went back to my friends at IBM, and then IBM bought the company. We IPO'd. We IPO'd about 3 weeks after we IPO'd, I was worth about $22 million. And 3 months later, I was worth whatever I was worth before I went to mainstream, because some of you may have heard about the .com crash. So, but I have a spreadsheet that shows me my net worth in the 20 million something because of our IPO, but I couldn't sell because they locked you up for 6 months. Anyway, it was an interesting situation. So then I went back to IBM. I started a venture-funded business inside IBM. IBM has a mergers and acquisitions division, and they also create joint ventures. They created a joint venture that I ran to around BlackBerry and iPhone. I got to basically run my own business inside of the giant IBM. I started 2 divisions at Westcon, Data Center and Cloud. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then I was the president of Unify North America, which is formerly Siemens Networking Systems. I'll tell you a story about that. And then my most recent job was actually cool. Does anybody know what a real estate investment trust is? So the term is REIT. So REITs are companies that are, it's a form of corporation, and what they do is they invest in real estate. And there are all different kinds of REITs. There are apartment building REITs. So they get investors together, they build apartment buildings, and then they rent inside the apartment. They rent the apartments, and they collect the rent, and that's how the REIT makes money. Simon Malls, that's a REIT, right? So when you go to a mall, it's the Simon Mall. It's a company that builds malls and leases out the space. What we did at Digital Realty was we built gigantic data centers, the size of 4 football fields and sometimes 3 floors high. And we provided space to cloud service providers like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, Salesforce, SAP, and the like. So those are some of the things that I've done. Some principles that, none of this is academic, this is kind of what I have, is when you're leading a team, the team needs, as a leader you need a vision, and then the team needs to know what that vision is. And a team that doesn't know where you're going is going to perform at half as well as a team that does. Half as well. And the people you're leading will be, the satisfaction, engagement level of your employees will be much less. It's a job. I show up at 8 and I leave at 5 and I get paid and that's great. Versus I'm showing up at 7:30 because I want to get going on this mission that we have as a company and we're going to do. Sounds corny, but I'm telling you, it absolutely makes a gigantic difference. I've learned from early on being a leader and not providing that, and being in organizations where it wasn't provided, and being in organizations where it is. So a vision, a shared vision that's well communicated. I'll talk about that a little bit. Okay? So it's a goal for everyone, right? Then you tie your plans to that vision. You know where you want to go, and then you build plans in order to get there, right? There's the expression, if you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up someplace else, right? So it's key to make sure everybody knows where you're trying to go. All right, so that's the vision. Then, as the leader, you want to understand, most importantly, your people. Because as I'll say a little bit later in the presentation, your people do the work. Your people bring in the results. I don't bring in, the president of Unify North America, I did some things from a leadership perspective, I'll talk about it, but all the work was done by my 750 employees. They deliver the results. And I will tell you that there are far too many leaders who forget that fact. And if any of you get into leadership positions in your career and that's your aspiration, if there's only one thing you remember, you should remember that. You should remember that. And you'll be far more effective, and your people would be a lot happier in their work. Organization. So you need to understand how your organization works. Who does what? And I'll say it later, you want your organization to be simple. You don't want it to be too complicated. If it's too complicated, to me that's a problem if you really aren't sure what you're trying to do and how to get there. Every complicated organization I've been a part of is confused on the vision part, or becomes confused. So you really want to understand how your organization is structured, because usually you inherit one, and then what you need to do in order to make it more effective. And then finally, and really, really importantly, is understanding your market. And again, this is a place where, I'll just tell you, just to say this. I've been in 4 C-suites in my career where I work for the CEO of the company. And I sit there with anywhere from 7 peers to 10 peers who work for the CEO. My last company was a $36 billion company. Me, 7 other people, and our CEO, we'd sit in the room. And in each of those experiences, I will tell you that people I know would be surprised at how not sure of what we're doing that this leadership team is. $36 billion company, we invest $2 billion a year in infrastructure, all this kind of stuff, far flung all over the world, and we're a group of people who, when we sit together, we're not sure, we have ideas, we have vision, we're not sure what, is this decision right? We never leave a meeting where we say, this is absolutely, positively the right thing. You leave me said, of the 3 things we looked at, I'm confident this one's the best. I hope so. So, a lot of people think, oh, the CEOs of these companies know exactly what they're doing, and they're being paid a lot of money, and they must know what they're doing. But it's, I'm not saying people don't know what they're doing. I'm saying people that it's hard, it's difficult in a large business. But understanding the market is one that is a very common flaw for leaders. I talked about people being one. You need to make sure you understand your people. But understanding your market is it's what do customers want? What problems do they have? I'm going to talk about this in my sales presentation later. How do you solve problems for your customers? And how should we organize our company in order to solve problems for customers so they'll buy our stuff or help our customers capture opportunities? And if you aren't connected with the market as a leader, you're gonna have the wrong vision or a screwed up vision, or in the execution you're gonna make a mistake because you don't understand what it is that people are calling for. And by the way, the number one place to find out what your customers want, if you're a leader or a member of the leadership team, are your salespeople. You have salespeople out there talking to customers all the time. The way I talk to my sales teams is I say, you all are the educators of the rest of the company. And we need you to make sure that you tell us what customers need. And if we're not giving them what they need, you go 4 levels up in management, you knock on my door and you tell me that we're not doing the right things. And so that's crucial. I'll also talk about spending time in the market. I talked a little bit earlier about the sort of lack of full confidence of C-suite executives. My father had a saying. His saying was, Dan, it's not so important that you make the right decision, because that's hard, but that you make the decision right. And what he meant by that was, you're going to have 70% hit rate on making, maybe a better way to put it is, you're going to make decisions and it's never crystal clear, it's the right decision, and everything you think is going to happen is going to happen. You have to make a decision and then watch, learn, be flexible, change, adapt, in order to ensure the decision you made becomes the right one. Rarely as a leader do you make a decision in a complex business situation, do you make a decision and you say, we're going to do these 10 things, and you do those 10 things and you are successful. You have to turn those decisions that are good decisions, the best decisions you can make at the time. Maybe sometimes they're the wrong decisions, but you turn them into the right ones by adapting. Really, really important concept. Okay, and then you execute. You have a plan, right? You have a plan and you execute that plan and you track how you're doing against that plan with milestones. And you adjust, as I just mentioned, right? You have the 10-point plan. That 10-point plan looks very different at the end than it did at the start. You got to make sure that you're flexible and you can adjust. Okay? All right. So, is this going to build or not? I'm not sure how my friend Usama did. Yeah, so this is supposed to say leadership principles on top. But I said some of this, right? My philosophies. People drive the business, not me. In aggregate, my people know 1,000 times more than me about what's going on in the business. And it's one of my key jobs is to draw that information out of them. Give them the opportunity to share it with me. Then I can process it, and I may not agree with everything they say, or I'll learn some things from them. But I've got other, commitments to, or other views of how the business should run, or I've got a board that's on my back, or something like that. But most of the stuff that you get is extremely valuable from your employees. They know what's going on in the business. For people, whenever I go into a new organization or I get promoted to cover a new organization, everybody says, oh, Mary, she's no good, and Sam, he's terrible, and John, he's fantastic, and Lisa is the superstar, right? I take that in, but then I draw my own conclusions. And usually it's right, but sometimes it's wrong. And the place where it's really wrong and you can find value is when you find somebody that people are saying, yeah, you know, Joe, he's no good. And you spend some time with Joe and you realize Joe is somebody who keeps going to his manager and saying, we have the wrong product. We need this product, not that product. And you sit down with Joe and you realize Joe knows what the heck he's talking about, right? And, or somebody who's got a different type of personality. This is one of the things that bothers me, is there are employees throughout organizations that have so much talent and you're drawing 50% of what they have. And you got to find a way to draw that other 50% out of them. Some don't want it drawn out of them. Most do. A lot of them get discouraged because no one's been drawn out of them or has cared about it to the degree they should for the last 8 years, so they're kind of discouraged. That's key. Communicating with employees all the time. So every C-level position that I've had, I have twice quarterly calls, and my peers say I'm crazy, my CEO says I'm crazy. Nope, at least twice we're going to have a call. We have an end of quarter review after our results are in. Like Digital Realty, we would announce our results, and then the next day I would have a call with my global team. And then we'd have a mid-quarter review. So every month and a half, I was talking to my team. And I would draw those subjects, by the way, I would go to my leadership team and say, go to your VPs and your managers and your people, tell me what's on everybody's mind so that we can include it in this all hands call, right? Really important. So there are things I wanted to tell them, and there are things that they wanted me to tell them. And I made sure that we had the content for both. Okay? Jack Welch used to say, I'm going to talk about this, be respectful, direct, and forthright. Jack Welch had this expression. He said, any manager who's not straightforward with their employees isn't worthy of the title manager. And this is a tough thing to do. But when you're a leader, sometimes you need to tell people, or when you're a manager, but managers are leaders too, right? You need to tell your employees in a straightforward way where they are strong and where they can improve. If I know that you have 8 great qualities and 2 qualities that you need to improve on, and I just talk about your 8 qualities because that's the easiest thing for me to do, and I never talked about the 2, I'm not being fair to you. And I'm also not being optimizing the business. So there are ways to do it respectfully, but as a manager and a leader, I'm telling you this is crucially important, and then it leads to the helping them grow. Employees in my organization, if they know me, they know I want them to grow. I want them to make more money. I want them to get more responsibility if they want more responsibility. They know that from me. And I think any great manager will pay attention to that one and say, I want employees to do well. I have employees sometimes that leave because we don't have the right level job for them at that time, and they come in and they say, Dan, I can go be an executive vice president over here, or I can go be a manager over here, and here I'm down here. And it's like, great, I mean, sometimes they'll think they're going to a great opportunity and they're not. I'll say, you might want to think about that. But I'm fine just to see people grow. And by the way, a lot of times that happens. They leave the company where I am, and then I go to another company and I go grab them, right? Because I had the opportunity. So, and then frequent roundtables by all leaders in the company. Managers should do it. Managers should do it, all the way up to the CEO. I'm going to talk about that in a context of, I think I'm going to talk about it. Let me make sure. Okay, an organization, a hierarchy is key. Okay, so I don't like this, I don't buy into this Google model of, there's no managers, there are no this, no that, right? My personal opinion on Google is it's it's hard to argue with their success, but they have they found themselves an incredible product, offering whatever you want to say, in a business that you can't fail. I mean, they can't be stupid, but they can't fail. So they've got these models and the way they talk about people and everything inside the organization. There are things to learn from it, but they're running 90% of their success, I think, is because they had cornered this online advertising business. And they made some good decisions, but they have tons of cash. So anyway, you need to know who is your leader. You need to know who's going to be looking out for you, or who's going to give you feedback on your performance. To me, you just cannot be sort of a all one level, spread out kind of a thing. I think you need a blend of inside and outside employees. I think it's IBM for a long time was insulated. IBM had all career IBMers. We'd let people in at 22, and then we condition them, and they'd be there all their lives. I think you need both inside and outside employees. And then in organizations, I say you got to avoid complexity at all costs. Leaders, I say spend 25% of the time with clients in the market, so you understand the market, as I mentioned earlier, right? Leverage your sales teams for feedback. I talked about that as well. Understand the history of the market that you're in. It gives you perspective, just like understanding history of the United States or history of the world. It becomes foundational to help you inform your decisions in the future. Obviously, understand where you are and understand what threats linger out there in the future. And also make sure your team knows that you know what's going on. You understand what's going on inside the company. You know what morale challenges that people may have, even though you may not have the fix for all of them yet. And you know what's going on in the market, and you talk openly with your employees about such things. Okay? All right, I'm going to tell you about a few situations. And the idea was we're going to Unify is a broken company, we're going to fix it, and then we're going to sell it. As I mentioned to you, I gave you I told you the end of the story already. We ended up selling it to Atos, which is a $12 billion IT managed services company headquartered in France. But it was a disastrous situation, especially in the region that Dean so kindly gave me to run, and that was Unify North America. In North America, we had 5 consecutive years of double-digit decline. And we have 4 regions. We had Latin America, North America, EMEA, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific, APAC. We had 4 regions. We were by far the worst. And we had 5 consecutive years of double-digit decline. We were the worst of the 4 regions. When I stepped into the role, I had 750 employees. About 4 years prior, there were 4,500 U.S. employees. So you think about how these 750 felt as they, came in every day with, that office is empty, that office is empty, just layoffs, all over the place. And by the way, they picked on North America. This is an interesting thing that you may know. They picked on whenever the company had to do a major layoff, to do it in Europe is extremely challenging and expensive, because it's like in Germany, what we ended up doing with some of the employees that we laid off, we would give them, no matter how long they were there, we'd give them anywhere from 18 months to 5 years of salary. And in the U.S., you could lay somebody, you can be really cold about it. You can lay people off kind of whenever you want to under certain rules. But it's just much easier to do. By the way, it makes it much easier for people to hire in the U.S. And we were going to, other organizations where I had operations in Germany or in France or wherever, I would be very hesitant to hire people. In the U.S., I hire people all the time. Because I didn't want to hire somebody, and then if they don't work out, 3 months later, I got to pay them 18 months of salary, right? So, different philosophies, but interesting background. Okay, the morale, as I said, when you go from that to 750, the morale was terrible. It was terrible, and We did, however, have quality products. We had Siemens engineered products. So you may know that Germany is famous for high quality, well engineered products. It's they're fantastic, as a generalization from an engineering perspective. So we had great products. So when I went to Unify, I forget what my next slide is. Let me just see what it is. Yeah, okay. When I went to Unify, I was like, I was dizzy in the first week, and I'm trying to figure out, what do I do here? And so the first thing I did was, over a 6-week period, I flew all over the country to all of our offices in North America and anywhere we had a concentration of employees where we didn't have offices. And I had roundtables with our employees, 5 to 8 people, an hour and a half long. We'd sit down in the room. The first few were really funny, I'll tell you about them. But we'd sit down, I'd close the door, and I'd say, look, no titles here. We're all teammates, and I want everybody to be completely open and direct with me about what they think is going on, because I want to learn what's happening in the business, what we're doing wrong, what opportunities we're missing, your new ideas, and so on. And the only rule is no death spirals of negativity. And we let these people, it's got to be productive. And I met with more than half of my 750 employees in small groups like that over 6 weeks. And I learned so much. This is where I get my, the people know what's going on in your business much more. We had McKinsey, who many of you may know is the premier consulting firm, coming and telling us what was going on. They couldn't have been further from understanding what was really going on inside of our company at that time. I learned it in 6 weeks. I had tons of notes, ideas. It was fantastic. And on that platform, me and my leadership team generated one of the things we learned was we had no vision. Right? I talked about vision. These people were like, what are we doing? We're laying people off, we're cutting this product, we have no idea what we're doing. Right? So we're just coming to work. And so the vision we put together, in this case, is not very sophisticated. It basically said, at the time we were a $210 million business. We're going to be a $500 million business by the end of 2017. That was the vision. That's what we're going for. So then it was, how are we going to do it, right? What's our strategy, and what plays are we going to run in order to do it? So these things are all kind of inside baseball, but I'll just tell you, as an example, we're going to get 50% of our business by selling through others, by getting partners like IBM and other managed service partners to sell our stuff instead of us selling it all directly. We're going to sell industry solutions instead of having a geographic-oriented sales team. So you have somebody in New York selling to banks and selling to insurance companies and selling to auto manufacturers, selling to retail organizations, selling across to governments. That's a regional sales model. We're going to go to an industry model where we have people who are experts in the financial services industry, calling on customers in the financial services industry with a portfolio of solutions that we had made for the financial services industry. Okay? Managed services is kind of a unique term, but basically, instead of just selling people stuff, it's selling it to them and managing it on their behalf. We decided we were going to do that. Then we knew our people were absolutely miserable, so we were going to create a winning culture and make it a great place to work. And then we were going to clean up our operations because our operations were a mess. So it was these 5 things that were going to drive us to that $500 million. And I put one of my direct report executives in charge of each, and then they built plans underneath each of these. And so we had plans and detailed plans under each. And at every all hands calls, when I told you I do 2 a quarter, we would go over this, and we talk about where we were in each one of these initiatives. And I mean, you had all of our employees, they would go to their manager and they'd say, Mary, I've got an idea. It fits perfectly with our Roadmap 17 strategy. Right? Everybody knew, we called it Roadmap 17. Everybody knew Roadmap 17. They started calling it R17. There wasn't an employee who couldn't tell you what Roadmap 17 was and what the 5 initiatives were. They all knew. And they're all into it. They were especially into it because they never had anything in the last 10 years to rally around, right? And so this was what we did, and we, in the first year, we grew 21%, and then the second year we grew 25%. It's compounded, and we were the most profitable region of all 4 regions. And when Atos bought us, they paid probably a $400 or $500 million premium versus what they would have paid before we did this. Right? So, because there's value in the company. Because, wow, North America is growing and it's doing well. So, but that I can't stress enough, this vision thing, right? So, and then we had measurements for it. But just that's an example of a leadership experience. And so we were a landlord with tenants, and our competitors were solution providers with customers. And there's this spectrum. And here we were. And we had been a leader for 8-9 years, and we were starting to hemorrhage market share. Because our competitors were saying, what would you like? Oh, you want blue, not green. Okay, we'll give you blue, not green. And we'd say, no, all we have is green. What's wrong with green? Right? So, so we had this culture, really challenging cultural issue in digital realty. That was big, and customers didn't like us. They didn't want to buy from us. They would buy from us because we had, like begrudgingly. So anyway, real estate company with tenants, covered that. Lacking a customer-centric culture. Whatever business you're in, if you're in business, leading, customer centricity is everything. I tell you, as I say, the market should drive you. Your salespeople know what's happening in the market, and that's how it all should work. And it wasn't working that way. We had acquired a company, digital headquartered in San Francisco, with global, we're a global company, but we were headquartered in San Francisco. The company we acquired was headquartered in New York, and we left it. My first mission was to integrate that company into digital realty. We had left it separate for 18 months. Totally different culture. It was a go-go culture. They had IPO. They were, jeans and t-shirts and stuff to work. And in San Francisco, suits and ties. And they didn't integrate them. And Dan, congratulations, welcome to Digital Realty. We'd like you to integrate, these 2 organizations. I could write a Harvard Business School or a Pace Business School study on all of that. So that was the leadership challenge at Digital Realty. So I'll just tell you a few things about what we did at Digital Realty. So I started a thing called the Executive Sponsorship Program. And I assigned our largest accounts, 2 of our largest accounts, to every one of my peers and to my boss, who was the CEO. I said, I got my boss's agreement on this before I said it to everybody, including him, but I said, these are the accounts you're responsible for. You will call on them every quarter, in person. You will call on these customers every quarter. And they'll know how to reach you. You'll occasionally call out of the blue and check in, and we're going to track all this and how much you do it. And so we had a whole bunch of executives sitting, mostly really outstanding executives who never called on customers. They had no idea. They just didn't understand what was happening in the market. And so what we did was we put them out in the market, and everything changed. Everything changed. A, they understood. B, they had to answer to these customers. They would go out and call on the CEO of Microsoft, right? They call on the CEO of Microsoft. CEO of Microsoft would say, you know what? You know why I'm not buying from you? Because of these 3 things. How do you go call on the CEO of Microsoft again a quarter later and have them say the same things to you? You can't. You come back from that call and you say, all right, you get your leadership team together and you say, we are going to fix these 3 things. I'm going to track it once a week. We're going to have a call to find out what's happening, blah, 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 right? And it changed everything about the company. And we had tremendous, once we got it in, the whole organization model and everything in place, sales skyrocketed for digital realty. We've been basically flat over the previous 3 years, skyrocketed, so that was really that was a cool thing. So just in summary, I want to highlight a few things, and then we can go to questions. Remember, employees drive the business. Communicating to the team that you're responsible for leading, and communicate with them all the time. These roundtables are absolutely fantastic opportunities to get understand what's happening inside your business. Who was it? You'll know the saying when I say it, but I can't remember who it was who said. But it said it was advice that he gave to the CEO of GM a long time ago, and it was basically the solutions. The solutions to every one of your company's problems can be found on the factory floor. And what that person was saying was, the people on the factory floor know what's going on inside GM and what most of the problems were that GM was facing at that time. And get out of your comfortable office and go down on the plant floor and go into the break room and ask people what's happening and what you can do to make the business better. Okay? Organization complexity to me is a sign of you're not sure where you're going, and then spending 25% of your time with clients or understanding your market as a leader will make you an effective leader to drive growth inside of your business or the organization that you're responsible for. Okay, so that's it.
Thank you.